You ever have that feeling like you're running flat out, giving it everything, but you're just not getting anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Like that Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland, running just to stay in the same place.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Well, today on the deep dive, we're looking at that feeling, but maybe through a lens you wouldn't expect. Wealth.
Right. But not just, dollars and cents. We're digging into the 5 types of wealth, looking at a much bigger idea of what it means to live a rich life.
We've got some really interesting material here, the author's own story, insights from talks with all sorts of people.
Exactly. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to pull out the key ideas about what truly defines wealth, moving beyond just the bank statement.
Because, let's be honest, the message we usually get is pretty simple. Money equals success, money equals happiness. That's kind of the default, right?
It absolutely is. More money, more options, more security, more happiness. That's the narrative we're fed.
But the sources we're looking at today really question that whole equation. They suggest financial well-being, yeah, it's important, but it's only one piece of the puzzle.
Precisely. It's just one slice of a much richer pie, you could say.
Yeah.
And the author gives us this framework, these 5 interconnected types: time wealth, social wealth, mental wealth, physical wealth, and then, yes, financial wealth.
Okay, so we're going to explore all 5 of those. But first, maybe let's dig into where this whole perspective came from for the author. It sounds like he started out pretty focused on the money side of things.
He did, yeah. Initially, it seems that way. He was a baseball player at Stanford, aiming for a pro career. That was his focus.
Okay.
But then a shoulder injury
Yeah.
basically took that option off the table. Right. And so, like a lot of ambitious people, he naturally started looking at, well, who's achieved conventional success? Financial success.
Right. And there was that conversation with a family friend about finance jobs.
Exactly. That conversation really highlights that initial pull, the idea of a 6-figure salary straight out of college.
Yeah, the author even says it sounded pretty damn good back then. It's that core assumption again. Money buys the good life.
Totally understandable. But something clearly shifted his perspective. A big turning point seems to have been the birth of his son in 2022.
Okay. How did that change things?
Well, it sounds like just witnessing time passing so quickly, seeing his son grow, seeing his parents age, it triggered a real reevaluation. He started thinking about what actually matters.
And that led him away from just talking to rich people.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
He deliberately started seeking out wisdom from older people, people who had lived longer, maybe fuller lives, not just financially successful ones. He shifted from asking about portfolios to asking about, regrets, joys, life lessons.
That's a big shift. So what did he learn from those conversations?
Well, a really strong theme emerged. Looking back, accumulating huge amounts of money just wasn't the main thing for most of them. Their defining moments, their sense of a life well lived, it rarely centered on financial milestones. And this lined up with research showing, maybe surprisingly, a pretty weak link between extreme wealth and lasting happiness.
Right.
Even hearing from financially successful people who maybe weren't fulfilled.
So all that led to a core realization.
Yeah, a really powerful one. Your wealthy life might be enabled by money, sure, but in the end, it's defined by everything else.
Everything else being?
Your relationships, your purpose, your health, how you use your time. Money becomes a tool, not the actual definition of wealth.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And that leads us right back to the 5 types you mentioned. Let's get a quick overview before we dive into the first one, time wealth.
Sure. So first, time wealth. That's about being aware of, focusing, and controlling your time, that super finite resource.
Okay.
Then social wealth, the depth and quality of your connections, your contribution to community. Mental wealth, that's purpose, growth, and having the mental space for reflection. Physical wealth, pretty straightforward, your health, your vitality, the foundation.
Right.
And finally, financial wealth, the tool we just talked about, supporting the others.
And you said they're interconnected, not just separate buckets.
Absolutely not separate. The real magic is in how they interact, how you prioritize them, and that prioritization shifts right through different seasons of life, as the author calls them.
Seasons of life, like career pushes, family changes, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Maybe you're focused on building a career early on. Maybe later it's about family. Maybe you hit a health challenge. These 5 types give you a kind of map to navigate those seasons.
And he also mentioned that tough times, like really difficult experiences, can actually trigger these big aha moments about what kind of wealth truly matters.
Oh, definitely. Hitting rock bottom, experiencing loss.
Yeah.
Those moments can bring this intense clarity. Suddenly you see, wow, I haven't spent enough time with people I love, or I've let my health slide, or this career success feels hollow.
It forces a reprioritization.
Exactly. It makes you confront whether your daily actions are really lining up with what you value deep down.
Okay, let's dive into that first one then. Time wealth. Awareness, attention, and control. Starting with awareness, what does that really mean here?
Awareness is about truly getting that time is scarce, it's precious, it's not renewable. The author mentions investor Graham Duncan's idea of a time billionaire.
A time billionaire.
Yeah, someone with over 1 billion seconds left to live. Duncan's point was, we obsess over financial billionaires, but we often completely undervalue the huge time wealth we have, especially when we're younger. Thinking in seconds really drives it home.
Wow, 1 billion seconds. That really reframes it, doesn't it? Makes you think about how easily seconds slip away.
It really does. And once you have that awareness, the next piece is attention. Where are you actually focusing that limited time?
Right, because our attention feels more scattered than ever these days.
Totally. And the author uses this great analogy from Toy Story. Woody and Buzz using Buzz's helmet like a magnifying glass to focus sunlight.
Huh, yeah, I remember that. To light the rocket.
Exactly. And it perfectly illustrates this idea. Concentrated energy gets you way more bang for your buck. Sometimes effort equals output 1-to-1. But if you focus your limited attention, that beam of sunlight on the really high leverage things.
But the Kairos time, he calls it.
Yes, those moments with huge potential.
Yeah.
You get way more done, achieve much bigger results than just putting in more hours, the Chronos time. It's focus over sheer volume.
Okay, so it's about the quality of the time, the focus you bring. Makes total sense. So then, how do we actually get more control over our time? What are the strategies?
Well, he offers several really practical tools. One is the energy calendar.
The energy calendar.
Yeah, you basically track your energy levels through the day.
Yeah.
You know which activities are green, they energize you, yellow, kind of neutral, and red, they drain you.
Interesting.
The goal isn't to eliminate all red or yellow. That's probably impossible. But it's about understanding your own rhythms and consciously trying to schedule more of those green energy-boosting activities, especially when you need to be productive. Working with your energy.
That sounds really useful, actually. Just being more mindful of where the energy drains are. What else?
Another powerful one is the two-list exercise. This came from a story about Warren Buffett and his pilot.
Okay.
It's basically a 3-step process. You list your top 25 goals, circle the top 5, and then this is the key part. You make a second list of the 20 you didn't circle and actively avoid them. It forces focus.
Wow, avoid them completely.
Well, or at least ruthlessly deprioritize them. It relates to categorizing tasks, like in the Eisenhower matrix. Important, urgent, important, not urgent, etc. The real insight is to spend way more time in that important but not urgent box.
Right, the long-term stuff. The strategic thinking, relationship building, skill development. Things that don't scream for attention right now, but are crucial down the line.
Exactly. The stuff that gets pushed aside by the tyranny of the urgent.
So how do we protect that important time? How do we actually focus when we need to? Distractions are everywhere.
That brings us to deep work, Cal Newport's concept. The author mentions Newport's deep work hypothesis.
Which is?
Basically, the ability to focus without distraction on a demanding task is becoming super real in our world. And because it's rare, it's becoming incredibly valuable.
Makes sense. So how do we cultivate that?
One tool is the flow state boot up sequence. It sounds fancy, but it's just about creating your own personal ritual to get into the zone.
Yeah.
Minimizing distractions, maybe putting on certain music, setting a timer, whatever works for you to signal to your brain, okay, it's focus time.
Creating the right conditions. I like that. And what about leveraging other people's time? Delegation comes up, right?
Yes, effective delegation is huge for creating time leverage.
Yeah.
Using that Eisenhower matrix again, those tasks that are urgent but not important for you, maybe they can be delegated to someone else.
Yeah, that's a skill in itself, effective delegation.
It really is. The author gives some good tips on how to do it well, because it frees you up for those higher impact, important activities only you can do.
And protecting our time also means saying no sometimes. The art of no. That can be tough.
So tough, but crucial. He suggests 2 little tests to help decide. The right now test, does this really need my attention right now? And the new opportunity test, is this new thing significantly better than what I'd have to give up to do it?
Those are good filters. Helps you be more intentional with your yeses.
Exactly. And finally, under control, there's time blocking, like Benjamin Franklin apparently did. And thinking about the 4 types of professional time.
Okay, time blocking is scheduling specific chunks for specific tasks.
Right. Very deliberate. And the four types of professional time are creation,
Hmm.
doing the actual value-add work,
Mhm.
management, emails, meetings, admin, connection, building relationships, and consumption, reading, learning, browsing.
Mhm.
The idea is to look at how you currently spend your time across those four. Are you spending enough time on creation? Or is management or consumption eating up too much? Then you can consciously time block to get a better balance.
Like batching emails, setting aside focused creation time.
Precisely. Being intentional about where your professional hours go, aiming for more high-value creation and connection, managing the management, and being mindful not to let consumption take over.
Okay, wow. That's a lot of practical stuff under time wealth. Really useful. Let's shift now to social wealth. That Margaret Mead quote about the healed femur being the first sign of civilization, that's powerful.
Isn't it? It just perfectly captures why caring for each other is so fundamental. A healed bone meant someone else took care of that injured person, protected them, fed them. It showed a move beyond just individual survival.
Yeah, it really highlights that our connections, our social wealth, are maybe the bedrock of it all.
Absolutely. Valuing and actively nurturing those connections is key. And the author kind of challenges the modern tendency to optimize everything financially, even if it means sacrificing social ties.
Like the idea of geographic arbitrage or being a digital nomad, moving somewhere cheap, but maybe ending up isolated.
Exactly. He asks, what's the real value if you save money but lose that close-knit support system? He mentions from his own experience, nothing beat moving closer to family and friends. That proximity, he argues, can be worth more than a bigger paycheck.
That really resonates. And he talks about the magic years with kids passing so quickly and that story about Greg Sloan leaving Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, Sloane's story is a potent reminder. Those early years fly by. The author points out, by the time your kid is 18, you've likely spent the vast majority of the face-to-face time you'll ever have with them.
Wow, that hits hard.
It does. And often our peak career demands happen right during those years. It's a call to be incredibly intentional about prioritizing that time. What will you regret more later?
Missing deals or missing your kids growing up. Yeah. It's not just close family, though, is it? Social wealth includes broader community connections.
Definitely. But he notes a worrying trend, declines in community involvement, religious participation, even things like patriotism.
Why is that decline a concern for social wealth?
Because those broader connections give us a sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger than just ourselves. That's a huge source of support and fulfillment that's maybe getting lost. Being active in a community connects you to people you'd never meet otherwise.
And then there's this idea of status games. He differentiates between earned and bought status. What's that about?
Ah, yes. He references the Diderot effect.
Yeah.
You buy one fancy thing and suddenly your old stuff looks shabby, so you need to upgrade everything else to match.
Right, the slippery slope of consumption.
That's often driven by wanting bought status, trying to signal your worth through possessions. Earned status, though, comes from your skills, your contributions, the respect you gain from others. Things money can't just buy. The point is to focus on earning respect, not just buying status symbols.
Okay, so how do we actively build this social wealth? He gives a lot of tips.
Well, it's a practical step, yeah.
Yep.
Simple things like giving specific, genuine compliments daily, or bigger commitments like what he calls a life raiser, like never miss a Tuesday dinner with your family, a non-negotiable rule.
I like that life raiser idea.
Me too. And being a darkest hour friend, the person who shows up when things get really tough, those consistent actions build deep social capital over time.
He also mentioned a tool, the relationship map. How does that work?
It's a really neat visual. A simple grid. One axis is relationship health, from demeaning to supportive. The other is frequency of contact, rare to daily. You plot your key relationships on it.
Ah, so you can see where people fall.
Exactly. It helps you identify your green zone, healthy, frequent relationships to cherish. The opportunity zone, good relationships you can invest more time in. The danger zone, frequent but draining relationships. And the red zone, frequent and actively harmful ones you might need to manage or distance yourself from.
That's a very clear way to assess things. And what about partnerships? He mentions Dr. Gottman's 4 horsemen.
Right, the big warning signs for relationships. Criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Recognizing those is huge, but he also offers positive tips. Tackling problems as a we, not me versus you, having separate interests, understanding it's not always 50-50, and crucially, never stop dating your partner. Keep the connection alive.
Good advice. And for conversations in general, doorknob questions and repeat and follow.
Yeah, doorknob questions are those open-ended questions that invite deeper answers, not just yes, no. Get people talking. And repeat and follow is active listening. You repeat back what you heard in your own words, then add an insight or ask a follow-up question. Shows you're really engaged.
Builds connection.
Absolutely. And finally, he makes this great distinction between networking, which can feel transactional, and actually building relationships. He advocates creating a personal brain trust.
A brain trust.
Yeah, like a small, diverse group of people you trust deeply, whose wisdom and perspective you value. Not necessarily formal mentors, just people you can turn to for honest advice and support. It's about genuine connection, not just collecting contacts.
That sounds way more meaningful than just networking. Okay, this is incredibly rich stuff on time and social wealth. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll dive into the other three: mental, physical, and financial wealth, and see how they all weave together. Stick with us on the deep dive.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've explored time wealth and social wealth. Now let's turn to mental wealth. The author starts with a really evocative question. What would your 10-year-old self say about you today?
Yeah, that one makes you pause, doesn't it? It's about holding on to that childhood curiosity, that sense of wonder and possibility throughout life. He mentions Howard Behar, the former Starbucks president, who apparently kept asking, what would the 10-year-old Howie think?
It's a great way to check if you've lost touch with your passions, your core self.
Exactly. And this connects to the universal quest for purpose, something humans have sought forever. Think Siddhartha Gautama becoming the Buddha, or the classic hero's journey narrative. It's all about finding meaning.
So mental wealth has these components: purpose, growth, and space. Let's start with purpose.
Purpose is really about finding your why. The author brings in the Japanese concept of ikigai.
Ikigai. That's the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for, right?
That's the one, finding that sweet spot. And he connects purpose to longevity, referencing Dan Buettner's work on the blue zones, places where people live exceptionally long, healthy lives. Having a strong sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, is a common factor.
It gives you direction, motivation. Okay, what about growth?
Growth is about embracing the idea that intelligence isn't fixed, that we can always learn and develop. He talks about the 4 zones of learning, moving from the comfort zone through the learning zone where growth happens, potentially into the panic zone if we push too hard too fast.
So staying in that challenging but manageable learning zone.
Ideally, yeah. And he mentions the Feynman technique as a great tool for truly understanding something deeply, basically. Trying to explain a complex topic in simple terms, identifying gaps in your own knowledge as you go. It really forces you to learn.
Continuous learning is a key part of mental wealth. Makes sense. And the last part is space.
Yes, create mental space. Stillness. Time for reflection in our noisy world. He gives the example of John D. Rockefeller taking daily breaks just to think.
Unplugging to process.
Exactly. He suggests things like scheduling a regular think day, taking a power walk without distractions just to let your mind wander and connect ideas, or developing a personal power-down ritual at the end of the workday to mentally switch off and create separation.
Those sound like really valuable practices for mental clarity. Okay, let's move to the foundation. Physical wealth. The author uses the analogy of your body being a house you have to live in for another 70 years.
Yeah, it's a great reminder to take care of the physical structure that carries you through life. He shares Kevin Dahlstrom's story, someone who realized they'd let their health slide and made a conscious decision to regain control, transforming their life.
It really is foundational. You can have all the other wealth, but if your health fails,
it undermines everything. The author even connects our physical form back to ancient ideas. Vitruvius, Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, seeing the human body as this incredible microcosm of the universe. And historically, thinkers like Plato and Aristotle emphasized physical activity as crucial for a well-rounded life.
So what are the key components here? Movement, nutrition, recovery.
Right. Movement is broken down into 3 essential types: aerobic exercise for cardiovascular health, strength training for muscle and bone density, and mobility work for flexibility and range of motion. The key is a thoughtful routine that includes all of 3.
Not just hitting the treadmill occasionally.
Exactly. Then nutrition, summed up simply as you are what you eat. The focus is on common sense principles, mostly plants, lean protein, healthy fats, avoiding processed stuff, and excess sugar. Pretty straightforward, but consistently hard to follow sometimes.
Tell me about it. And finally, recovery. This feels like the one people neglect most.
Hugely underappreciated, especially sleep. The author quotes some stark statistics like a huge percentage of adults getting insufficient sleep. And he brings in Andrew Huberman's work on just how critical quality sleep is for literally everything: physical repair, mental function, emotional regulation.
So what helps with sleep?
He outlines 9 rules for sleep things, like consistency, managing light exposure, especially morning sunlight and avoiding blue light at night, keeping the room cool and dark, avoiding caffeine and alcohol late in the day, basic sleep hygiene, but really powerful.
And breathing techniques.
Yeah, science-backed breathing protocols like physiological size or box breathing are mentioned as simple, effective ways to calm the nervous system and promote restfulness, whether for sleep or just managing stress during the day.
Okay, so time, social, mental, physical, that leaves financial wealth. We've kind of established it's a tool, not the end-all be-all.
Right. And the author warns against the arrival fallacy, that feeling that once you hit a certain financial number, then you'll finally be happy. It's often fleeting.
He tells the story of Jacob Fugger, the incredibly wealthy Renaissance banker.
Yeah, Fugger amassed maybe the greatest fortune in history relative to the economy of his time. But his life seemed almost entirely focused on accumulation, maybe at the expense of other forms of wealth. It's a cautionary tale about making money the sole focus.
So what's the basic model for building financial wealth as a tool?
It boils down to 3 core steps. Build marketable skills the world values. Leverage those skills to earn income. And manage your expenses, effectively spend less than you earn. Simple, but not always easy.
And he offers some career advice related to that.
Yes, 7 pieces. Focus on creating real value. Get good at storytelling, selling yourself and your ideas. Build a reputation as someone who figures things out, jump at opportunities, dive through cracked open doors, and focus intensely on what you can actually control.
Good, actionable advice. What about specific skills?
He lists 6 marketable meta skills, things like clear communication, critical thinking, problem-solving, adaptability, skills that are valuable across many different fields and roles.
And on the investing side, building wealth over the long term.
He collaborated with Nick McGilly on this part. It covers the standard asset classes: index funds, bonds, real estate, maybe some private equity or art collectibles if appropriate. And importantly, starting your own business or creating your own products can be powerful wealth generators.
Any key principles for investing?
The core messages are pretty timeless. Be patient, think long-term. Invest early and often. Harness compounding. Live below your means. Avoid unnecessary debt. Be frugal with yourself, but generous with others. Be super wary of anything that sounds too good to be true. Embrace simple, low-cost index funds for most people. Avoid investments wrapped in complex jargon you don't understand.
Sound. Classic advice. Okay, we've covered all 5 types of wealth. How do we wrap this all up?
Well, the core message really is just reinforcing that idea. The true wealth is so much more than just money. It's this multifaceted thing involving our time, our relationships, our mental state, our physical health, and our finances working together.
It's about living a balanced, fulfilling life across all these dimensions.
Exactly. And the invitation to you, the listener, is to maybe take a step back and reflect on these 5 types in your own life.
Yeah.
How are you prioritizing them right now? Where are the imbalances?
Which leads us to that final provocative thought. Which of these 5 types of wealth deserves more of your attention right now? And maybe more importantly, what's one small step you could take even today to start cultivating it?
It's a great question to ponder. Thanks for diving deep into these ideas with us.
Absolutely. Food for thought, for sure. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.